Hi there, how's it going? Today we are doing another BioDevils podcast. Today on a really cool survival horror game, or rather games. It is about Dead Space and the Dead Space 1 remake. So both the original and the remake. But before we get into actually talking about that, let me go ahead and introduce all of our guests here. So first up, we have Mr. KaptainKaos. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, what's up? Glad to be talking about this in the remake. I enjoyed both of them, so yeah.
Yep. After that, we have Mr. Brandel. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm the hostage here. Yeah.
Okay. Nobody's holding you hostage here. Okay. Well, well, Brandon comes up with a fake story here, a slanderous one at that. We
It's
have
truth, and you know it.
our final guest of today's podcast, Mr. DevilHunterJames. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I have to be quiet. I'm in my ecology class. I mean, Scientology. I mean, we're not studying the marker.
I sure hope we're not, but you all know me as BioDevil_Dom. And without further ado, let's just get right into it. So, how did you all get into the first Dead Space? Let's go first with that one.
I'm gonna be real. I don't even remember how I got into Dead Space. I just know that I became familiar with it when two was popping off and coming out. Cause I remember the commercials. So yeah, honestly, I don't remember how I got into Dead Space. I just know that I did. I tried to play it on that old ass laptop from many years ago, but I just couldn't hold a stable frame rate to save what's left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my friend has a habit of finishing games faster than his stepdad, so his stepdad barred him from actually finishing Dead Space in particular for some reason, which is hilarious. So I don't think he even beat the first one until years later.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, with me, like it's I can't really. It's pretty much the same with me. It's been so long, it's kind of hard to remember because I think I might have played it when probably around when two was coming out. It was either then or I just can't remember exactly, but I know what kind of got me intrigued was that people were comparing it. They were just calling it Resident Evil 4 in space. So, which I mean is I would say is a fairly accurate comparison to some extent. Uh, but yeah, I mean I think that's kind of what got me intrigued, and yeah, I ended up playing it and really enjoying it. And then of course I moved on from there to Dead Space 2, and yeah. So I mean, I guess that's what really got me into it. Mostly probably just I guess word of mouth.
What about you, James?
I played Dead Space because a friend of mine bought it and introduced me to it. We just thought it looked cool. Ended up scaring the hell out of us because this was like way back when the first game came out. And yeah, it's kind of just history from there. Dead Space 2 was also pretty much where it took off for me.
Yeah. So,
That's
like,
pretty much it.
so for me, I was aware of Dead Space to some degree. Like I would hear about it like the name kind of thrown around here and there. And I just recall like one of my friends mentioning, "Oh, like you should really check out Dead Space because you might like it if you like Resident Evil 4, right?" Um, but I ended up not playing it at the time, mostly because I was really hell bent on just not like touching anything from EA at that time because of a lot of the like scummy practices coming out of like their games and stuff like that. So I like avoided playing it initially because of what I had heard about EA and like at least at that time from like the 2010s, and it wasn't until like many years later where somebody else suggested that I try out Dead Space and that I'd probably really like it because it's basically like RE4. And so I sat down. I picked it up for the PlayStation 3 actually, and I started playing it. and I actually really enjoyed it. So much so to the point where I ended up picking it up again on Steam and playing through it again just because I really liked Dead Space 1. And then after that, like some of you guys, I just started getting into the other games. Still haven't finished Dead Space 3, but I enjoyed
Yeah,
Dead Space 2. Enjoyed Dead
At
Space
the
2,
end of
though.
that game, dude.
I keep meaning to go back to that game and finish it, but I never do. It's not like I wouldn't even say it's necessarily like a bad game, but it's just like, of course, the weakest of the trilogy. Um, and yeah, I mean, but yeah, I've been meaning to actually finish that game.
Yeah, me and James actually started a playthrough when they released it on Steam. When it finally
Yeah,
got
and that's the
taken
other
off
cool thing
of
about it is that it's the co-op element.
yeah, like it is a it's got some really cool ideas, but it's very evident that a lot of studio interference or publisher interference, I should say, is what really hurt that game.
The little bot that goes to get materials. Definitely not EA's idea.
Yeah. Oh, and the
That's so
microtransactions
EA.
to get more bots. Yeah.
I would say the only downside, by the way, with the co-op for 3 was that if you don't have somebody to play with, you miss out on a lot of Carver's story stuff. Very
Yeah.
strange design decision on that one.
Yeah, that
Well,
really sucks if it's like kind of locked behind that, so you miss out on like certain story like plot points.
yep. But we'll talk about Dead Space 3 another time for sure, especially if we ever get around to finishing it. James, I'm looking at you. So
What you
we
looking at me for?
We gotta finish it soon. But yeah, like for now, right? It's like yeah, that's basically how I got into Dead Space. Started playing it like I think in like around 2017 or 18. I don't remember. It's definitely not too long ago when I started getting into these games. But yeah, I just really enjoyed these games, and I I am very mixed on which one I like more between Dead Space 1 and 2. I like them both, but for different reasons. They're both like really fantastic games. It just like it's hard for me to pick a favorite per se. And I think that's also true with the remake because the remake is such a like a solid remake in on itself because it's a lot of people compare it to like the Resident Evil 1 remake where it's so one to one that like it in some case or for some people I should say it basically replaces the original, and I could definitely see that, but I also feel like I have an appreciation for the original because of the the very slight nuanced differences, but we'll get into that momentarily. Um, so speaking of which, actually, what are your guys' thoughts on the remake of Dead Space 1, and how do you think it handles just the content and the story regarding that game, and just how does it compare to the original?
Um, well, I guess I'll just kind of get my criticisms of it out of the way because, like, for the
Mhm.
most part, yeah, I would agree it's a fairly solid remake. Um, the only major things for me is just the well the way the characters look for the most part. I just think I know it was a pretty big controversy with some people, but yeah, I also of course wasn't a fan of like the sort of redesign of um, what was it? I keep forgetting her name, but Isaac's girlfriend. Uh, she
Nicole?
just does not look. Yeah, Nicole.
Oh, Nicole,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, she looks all pretty much like not even 20 years old, like 30 years older than she does in the original
Yeah,
game.
they make him older.
Uh, they
That's the part I
basically,
didn't like at all, personally.
yeah, they basically did the modern Western game design practice of just beating all the women over the head with the ugly stick. And then the new actor for the actor for Isaac, I just was not really a fan of the way the way he looks. Of course, the joke is he looks kind of like Adam Sandler. But yeah, I mean, I kind of liked his original look a little bit better, but it's kind of a small nitpick for the most part. And of course, I guess I'm more mixed on Isaac being voiced as opposed to him being silent in the original. Um, I I guess in some ways I like it because it does give him a little bit more personality. But then it was also like an interesting thing, going from the original Dead Space to Dead Space 2, where Isaac does actually have a voice and he does have more of a personality as opposed to, in the original game where, yeah, he was just a silent protagonist. Um, so yeah, I don't know, mixed feelings on that, I guess. And yeah, and then I don't know, like yeah, like you said, it is pretty close to the original game. I do like how it didn't really deviate much in terms of just the design of how the game plays, the look of everything. It's pretty one to one for the most part. Um, but I would say like I don't think a remake can ever really like replace the original game because there are things about the original game that I do like a little bit better, and there are things that that the remake doesn't do, the original game does. Um, but for the most part, yeah, it's pretty similar. Uh, but yeah, I enjoyed the remake. I don't know the status of like if they're going to do the second game. I would actually like to see
So
them do the other games.
there was a news update like a few days ago
I
actually
think I
about
did
that.
like yeah
Um,
that it
the,
got shut down or something. That they
no,
were going to work
so
on it.
Yeah, he said they
no,
weren't
no, no.
interested.
Yeah,
Uh,
so like EA just does not want to do it. They're not interested in it. Partly because they feel as though Dead Space is not profitable, although, this is the same company that has like the most unrealistic sales expectations because they assume that if they just dump in a bunch of money into advertising that's going to make a return on investment, which it never really does. But this is EA,
So they did
right?
with 2. 2 had a lot of advertising.
Yeah, well, they do that with a lot of their games. Like even Battlefield is really guilty of that shit. Like,
Well, in fairness though, Battlefield will make his money back, so that makes sense.
Especially,
But
I
in
mean, look at Battlefield 6. It already made its money back and more.
yeah.
that's
So
our
it's
statement.
it's just they do that with a lot of their games, but the games that are never gonna really make that return on investment, and especially like a horror game, right, where you're already getting into like a very specific territory and regarding like the genre and potential niche around that genre, right? That
yeah, it's a
you like
smaller
like
audience in comparison to like an online shooter like Battlefield, for
exactly,
instance.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's like you're
Or
not
is it
gonna see
FIFA?
that.
Oh, wait, they don't
Right.
have FIFA anymore, do they?
I think they still have
it's make
FIFA. Yeah, they pretty
Yeah,
certain
they're
they still
still
have
they
FIFA.
don't have the name. They just make the
They don't have
games.
the name. Okay.
Yeah, and it's
I
still
did.
making
I
the
knew
same
there's.
amount of money as they did before, so like it matter.
Yeah, I knew there was something like they can't use the name FIFA anymore, but like it matters.
Yeah. Well, anyway, like yeah, so we honestly we should get a Dead Space 2 remake. The question is, will we, and who will it be by? Because apparently, at least according to the news around it, and it hasn't been verified by somebody from EA directly, as far as I know. But they are looking to just get rid of the IP, or just people within EA are hoping that they just get rid of the IP so that it isn't under EA anymore. I don't know how often EA gets rid of IPs that they hold the rights to, but I don't know if that will
Not often.
necessarily be a good or a bad thing in this case if they got rid of Dead Space from their own personal catalog.
So are they talking about just
Well,
like selling the IP, or are they just gonna?
yeah, that the
They just want to sell
problem
it.
with that though is that the talent that made the remake is not going to be there for future games, right? Because like
Yeah.
yeah, sure you can say anyone can make Dead Space, but not anyone can make Dead Space. That's
Exactly.
been
Yeah.
proven with what let's just say with Ghost Protocol, right? That had a good amount of original developers from 1 and I think 2, right? And look how that turned out. Granted, it's a bit more complex than that though. But my point is that not any and everyone can recreate Dead Space like they did with Dead Space Remake, for example, Motive. I know
Yeah.
they're busy right now making the Iron Man game, but still, like they've proven they can, make a Dead Space game.
Yeah, well, and to go off of that point too, it's not just the fact that like, well, okay, yeah, even if you do have those developers, right? You could have Callisto Protocol as a situation where like you have studio interference, and then they want you to like insert shit, which I didn't know for the longest time until somebody told me that like yeah, a lot of the like dialogue it's in reference to PUBG. That's why they were talking about like survival of the fittest and stuff like that, because it was still using the old dialogue when that game was actually like connected to the canon of PUBG, which is why it is the way that it is. So
A $90 brick.
yeah,
Sorry,
like
still sore.
I wouldn't I wouldn't want that same situation with Dead Space for a Dead Space 2 remake. And also too like you mentioned, Brandon, because it wouldn't have motive if they got rid of the IP, right? They also would not have access to the Frostbite engine, which is DICE's engine, right? Which is what that remake is made off of. And like personally, I think an in-house engine like Frostbite looks a hell of a lot better than Unreal 5, because a lot of these developers are, switching over to Unreal 5, which has resulted in like varying degrees of performance issues or problems with said games, right? So it's
Yeah, Unreal 5 is just an easier engine to develop for, and it's just generally a lot cheaper. Like that's
Yeah, it's accessible.
the main reason why. And yeah, I'm afraid, like, yeah, if there is another studio that picks up the IP, they'd probably just resort to, like you said, probably like just doing a UE5 remake of the game.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where I would be worried about that. But going like into just like Dead Space 1 remake, and going into that original question that I was asking, I don't know if Brandon or James, if you had any opinions regarding that.
Regarding what Dead Space remake?
Yeah, Dead Space remake. Do you feel like
Yeah.
it's handled its quality and story as good as the original?
Yeah,
Or...
I'll said it before, I'll say it again. Like, it's hands down probably the best remake out there for a video game, let alone a horror game. Like, in my opinion, I think this surpasses even Resident Evil 1 remake on how well they did it.
Ooh.
Not only they managed to surgically put in, content that doesn't contradict for the most part. I will get on one aspect about the game though, is I don't like what they did with the New Game Plus ending. I feel like that's unnecessary for them to try to hard connect 1 and 2 when we already have, Dead Space 2's already did it itself, right? So it doesn't need to, have another addition to be connected to each other, right? But aside from that though, at least it's an optional ending. You don't need to see it, you don't care about it, whatever. Aside from that though, I love the fact that Isaac talks, because like that's kind of a grab of mine now in retrospect, is when you have a character that doesn't talk in the first game and he does in the sequels. That kind of like takes me out of the game as far as like in the future is concerned. I'm like, why is he not talking? Like, because like the character himself is very likable. Kind of like how Jack is. Like, he's a very likable character. So when I hear him talk in the very first game, it's just weird.
I do wish there was like a plot reason for that, like why he wasn't talking in the first game and then why he does all of a sudden in 2. I mean, it's pretty interesting, like I said, that he does talk in 2 and he has a personality, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of wish they would have actually maybe gone into that, but they just don't.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone yelling, "Isaac, help us!" Man, never has anything to say.
Isaac. Just constantly in your fucking radio, right? But
yeah,
I mean, they do
importantly,
these
though,
long talk sessions. There's a lot of dialogue between Hammond and Isaac and all them. It's like they never, I don't know, he never speaks. It's really weird. I'm not really
Yeah,
a fan
I
of the
was ready
silent.
for it.
I'm not really a fan of everyone has this long yap session with the protagonist. They say nothing. I'm not a fan.
Just nods.
Yeah, that's
Metroid
particularly
4.
why
That's a roast
that's
for another
particularly
time.
why I'm not a fan of silent protagonists anymore. Because like I feel like I'm disconnected. Like people always say like, well, you can fill in the blanks, right? But that's fine and all. But I'm not my character. I'm not the character in the fucking game. Let them talk. I can already do
At
that
some,
if the character's already talking.
I think at some point you just have to admit that it's just we're too lazy to actually write a character.
Yeah, because
I
like
feel like the fill in the blanks thing only goes so far. It's like, oh, Link doesn't talk. I'm like, okay. He's like one of the most famous characters in gaming. He never says two words that isn't, yelping. It's kind of gotten
right,
old for me.
even still like, especially in a game that is heavily dialogue based, like voice acted at least, he should be talking. And then one thing like the old school games where it's just fucking text on the screen, right? Fine, you can get away with that because you got to use your imagination at that point. Before like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, the characters are talking. Let the man talk.
Yeah.
Let him cook.
Yeah. But anyway, the another aspect of the remake I like is them filling in the plot holes of the game. Or expand upon what's already there. But the biggest plot hole they fix is how Nicole is interacting with the environment when she's a fucking ghost. Like logically, right? Isaac should go through everything and no problem, but that's not the case. So big dubs for them on that one.
Yeah. James, did you want to go on this point too before I share my piece?
As far as things that the remake has done, that's great. I mean, the removing the meteor minigame and turning it into just something you interact with, I think, is the most obvious improvement. Nobody liked that minigame. It was terrible, and on the higher difficulty, it was genuinely like hard, and not the fun kind of hard. So, them turning it to just something you interact with was way better. That was like my biggest thumbs up because I never liked that minigame myself.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, yeah, I didn't really care for that in the original, so I like that they actually improved upon that.
Yeah, like I think the remake in terms of gameplay, I think it's perfect. Like whatever complaints I have with the original Dead Space, I do not have them with the remake.
And then I remember like the stuff with like the tentacles grabbing you and from hallways in the original too. That got kind of annoying. I think if I remember correctly, they did kind of address that in the remake. I don't think it was like as obnoxious.
I didn't really get grabbed, so maybe like I didn't really
Yeah,
experience that problem.
I just remember it was like kind of a thing that a lot of people, some people had issues with.
I'd say the other biggest improvement they did was the weapons. All the weapons feel useful,
Yep, all of them have their
especially
niche.
the flamethrower. My
Yeah,
God,
the
they turned the
flamethrower is fucking
flamethrower
god tier.
into putting up the wall of fire is way too good. Like that, and combine that with the force guns. Like, yeah, I don't think you can be beat. This shit is
But
so
most
good.
importantly, you can shoot out a canister at them. Like that right there made a flamethrower my favorite weapon to go to for like general crowd control or damage over 10.
Hmm.
It's the original game. I don't think the flamethrower was very good at all. I remember people didn't really use it. Versus the remake, now it's like top 5 weapons.
Yep, easily.
Yeah, I don't recall ever really liking using the flamethrower. I think I maybe used it like once when I got it in the original, and then I was like, yeah, never again. Never again. But actually, you bring up a good point too, because like it, because the way that I see the remake is like I'm kind of like Chaos, where like I don't necessarily think that it replaces the original. I think it's a good way to like if you go back and play the original, you have a good way of looking back at like why this game was so great the way that it was back in I think it was in 2008 when that game released, right? But then you have the remake, which does like all these like neat little improvements and builds upon the things that they tried in the original that maybe weren't so great in the original, but clearly got ironed out with this remake. So like alt fire on guns, right? It's like one of the things that I think the remake does really well is like okay, a flamethrower, you put up the like wall of fire, or like
a
the
wall of fire, and it's just like have fun with that.
yeah, or like the one that gets me a lot for the original is the assault rifle or the pulse rifle, right? It's is you just put it up in the air and it just is like this weird like spin AoE fire mode, right?
Yeah,
That wasn't really useful, right? But in the remake, it's now a grenade launcher, which is like, okay, that was a very
It's
solid
two.
change, right?
If
What
you
was
want to
it
be blunt,
in?
they just took how it worked in Dead Space 2 and put it in 1, which is good because the
Yeah,
pulse rifle in 2 was actually useful.
yeah, and yeah, it's just generally, it's like the guns that weren't that great in the original just completely got reworked to be so much better and way more useful and way more fun to play around with. Um, so I think that's like probably the biggest takeaway for me with the remake is like just the improvement on gameplay. I am in agreement with Brandon about the ending, though. I do not like the alternate ending because I recently did get the platinum for Dead Space, and after doing that ending, I'm like, yeah, I don't really like this ending per se. I think the original ending where um, you just beat the game and Nicole just kind of shows up and it does like the jump scare is way more effective because you don't need this like um,
Hand-holding explanation shit to
yeah,
get to the sequel.
yeah, and I
Because like
think
that kind of kills the mystery of Dead Space 2 actually, because they gave away the answer of how they got a red marker in the first place. In 2, you eventually find out that Isaac is the one that gave them the plans and all that shit, right? But in the new ending, they gave away the answer by saying like, yeah, so he knows how to make it. Therefore, you can put two together immediately once you see the red marker that okay, he's the one that made it, or give him the plans to make it. So it does kill the mystery for at least that aspect of the sequels.
yeah, so like I I really dislike that ending. I wish they would have I wish they if they were gonna do an alternate ending, I think they should have done one that was like still equally as vague as the original ending, but one that kind of just play like I don't know, like plays along with what happens after he gets jump scared, you know?
This is a good thing I didn't play New Game Plus because I actually didn't even know about the alternate ending.
So yeah, so the alternate ending, you have to get these markers throughout the game, right?
Mm.
You pick I forget how many there's total. I think it's like
Like
12?
12 of them.
12, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and you put them on this altar towards the end of the game. There's like this altar with a big marker and all these candles, and you put them where the candles are.
Before you leave the station, by the way. So you gotta do all that before you leave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I can't remember if I don't know. I'm not sure if I did that or not. It's been a while since I've played it.
The best part about it is that it actually changes every time you pick up a marker. It actually changes how Isaac is, because like it has it where you're under the influence of the marker. Because like one line for this encounter will be different once you start collecting the markers for New Game Plus.
Hmm.
So I do like it for that aspect. It is technically not the same playthrough you're doing once you start collecting them because you are getting unique dialogue.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I just don't like how the ending is. Kind of ruins the surprise of him knowing, how to make a marker.
Yeah, so like like I said, I'm in agreement with you on that one, Brandon, because like I do think that the alternate ending does kind of spoil what made the original ending so unique and so great. I could honestly, and I'm glad that it's only optional because I kind of view that one as like, yeah, it exists, but if I had to pick, like I'm gonna pick that original ending because it just works so well. Um, The other thing, though, that I wanted to bring up too, since we're on this subject, is Dead Space 1, at least depending on which platform you played it on, because I believe the PC port was missing all of the DLC content that the console ports had. the original had like a bunch of different like suits that you can get through DLC and stuff. Probably one of my personal favorites from the original game is the Obsidian suit, but those suits are no longer in the remake, and now we have a bunch of new suits. Also one in reference to the original 2008 release, with the original textures, no less. Um, what are you guys' thoughts on like the DLC content that is in the remake, and do you think they could have handled that better or try to bring in some of that old content that they cut out, or do you think it's fine as is?
Is it mostly
DLC.
just like cosmetic
Yeah.
DLC, like suits and stuff? Or
I don't have any of the DLC, so I have honestly no comment, and admittedly, I kind of don't care in this regard because I didn't win my way to get them. I usually
think,
don't change out the default design anyway, so I'm not bothered. But
yeah,
so you guys can have fun with that one.
I don't
Once
really
I
have
got
much
the
of an
level 6
opinion.
suit, it was over. I didn't need
Yeah,
anything else. Skull suit was
yeah.
too good.
I mean, it's pretty cool they have the original suit that they, you can actually change into that. I mean, that's a pretty cool Easter egg. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I didn't really. Um, I mean, I thought the new suits looked pretty cool. I mean, I didn't really have much of a issue with them, like I guess not carrying over some of the other suits. Um, but yeah, so I guess I don't really have too much of an opinion on that.
Uh, yeah, because like for me, it was like I did get some of the DLC suits for the original game. Because though I think that was like one of the last few sales at the time when I did get them. That's why I got them. They were like dirt cheap for like a dollar a piece or whatever, right? So even though it kind of sucks that like they didn't bring that stuff back, like I do like those suits because they looked really cool and stuff, but they ended up cutting those out. The remake has like these new ones, and I forget there's like this blue one. It's got this like unique helmet. I forget the name of that one, but that one looks cool. I really like that one, but like it is one that's kind of flawed in my opinion, in that like anytime there's blood that gets on the suit, it gets the least amount of blood compared to all of the other suits in the game. Especially the default suits that are available to you. But
Honestly,
yeah.
I'm trying to think. I don't even remember a lot of these suits from the original. I remember like the Scorpion armor. I don't think that made it to
No.
the remake. Most of them were color palette swaps, were they not?
Yeah, there were color palette swaps, and if I'm not mistaken, they also swapped out the plasma cutter as well. I think they came with like weapon skins basically, so they were like uh the weapons that you would have available to you, but like in the theme of whatever costume or suit that you had.
Yeah, they had something for I think the plasma cutter and the line gun.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it was the okay. I found it: the Ripper, the plasma cutter, and the pulse rifle.
And I I figured out the name of the suit in the remake that I was thinking of. It was the Venture suit. That one in particular, if you get any blood on that suit, it doesn't splatter onto the suit that much. Which
I
it's
did like Infested Isaac. That was a cool idea.
Infested Isaac was kind of interesting. I like the bloody suit as well, just because if you want to have like Isaac constantly covered in blood, and then if you get any more blood on him, right, it's like he's just completely drenched. So it's just kind of a cool cool looking costume to have when you're like just in the thick of things and just you start stomping on necromorphs. And actually this is another cool thing that they did in the remake, because he's voiced, is you hear Gunnar Wright basically just doing the same or saying the same shit that he was saying in Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3. He's just like, fucking die, piece of shit. Like, it's fucking great.
It takes a lot longer in 1 to do that, though.
Yeah.
You have to stomp on something for a while. It's not like 2 and 3 where like 5 seconds in he's already splitting.
Yeah. So
as I said, I don't remember if level 6 suit was in the original. Was it the skull suit or whatever they called it?
The white one, yeah, it was.
It was okay. That suit is so good, man. In the remake, I was like, nah, I'm just sticking to this. I look like the Punisher, but Isaac.
I used that in my final run, actually. Because all I had was like just use a couple of guns 1,000 times or whatever it was. So I used that for my last run because I had nothing else to do. The nice thing though is like that suit, like it's not like I think in the original you had to actually manually switch between suits, whereas in the remake it's the most upgraded one. That's the one that you just have on, and if you switch to any of the costumes, you just have to remove them in order to go back to that one.
And you keep the stats, right? You could be the level 6 suit, but wear the level 5 suit type of thing.
I believe so.
That was a good change, so you could just pick whatever you like look-wise.
Yeah, because it's because you get the not the sanctified one, but there's the one you get for doing impossible, right? Where the one where it's like, oh, it's permadeath, right? Even though you can technically bypass the permadeath.
You know, like that mode had me fucked up because I thought it was only a save file, and you only had one chance to save. So believe it or not, I actually made it halfway through the fucking game before they glitched out on me. And that's when I discovered, like, oh, you can actually just save and give it one, just don't die. Oh, well, fine, that's easier.
Yeah.
So I did that.
Yeah, no.
All day.
That thing is not Zealot. It's not Dead Space 2.
Yeah, that description was not good, or at least my comprehension wasn't good. Like the way it was written, I'm like, well, shit, I gotta play this very carefully. But yeah, I literally made it halfway through the game exactly, and
I died like twice.
Yeah, I only died once, thankfully. I never died again after that. Well, died as in my game glitched out. I never had a problem afterwards.
The environment got one on me, let's just say.
Yeah, that's believable considering how hazardous the game is. I absolutely believe it.
Not really an issue as much as some of the environment traps.
Yeah, it's
And yeah, the permadeath thing is kind of whatever when you can just close the game immediately and just load it up again. So not really an issue
on the cloud. So like,
I had
it's a checkpoint. Save. Do that.
I never had to. You can close it fast enough to reset, so you don't actually have to have the backup. But if you want to be safe, you can.
Yeah, exactly what I did.
I actually, speaking of impossible mode, for those of you that have completed it at least, was there any point in the game that you kind of were looking at a potential like soft lock in terms of being able to progress? Because I had a couple in my run.
Soft lock. Well,
No, my runs are pretty smooth.
I'm always optimizing my run,
Yeah,
so I never had soft lock.
Because I ran into an instance where I forget the name of the necromorphs, the ones that basically split apart and they're just like hands and heads or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think I was going into hydroponics and I was like trying to get back to the bridge. And just from where I was at, there was just that one enemy that was just constantly getting me because where I was located in the game as far as like my save state was concerned, it was like right in front of me. So like I would basically get hit and instantly die, and I had basically a split second to just freeze the enemy and just kind of get out of the way and kill it before I could prevent myself from dying or whatever, so that was kind of like my soft lock situation.
No, I never had a situation like that. The worst thing I had to deal with was the electricity because, duh.
Yeah, I mean, there's been other games where I've gotten into a situation like that. The game would have saved somewhere, and I was like about to die, and then I have to try to figure out a way out of it, or just like go all the way back.
That sucks.
Yeah, so that almost killed the run for me, but I somehow managed to get past it and salvage the situation. So, like, it worked out. I ended up beating Impossible after like a week or some shit like that. I don't remember how much time I spent on Impossible, but I think the part that I was like practically shitting myself was for the final boss, because I'm like, I hope I don't fuck this up, because I don't want to keep redoing this, and I did it flawlessly on the first attempt. So, with the Dead Space remake and the original, right? They're running on like different engines. So there's some differences in like lighting and visuals and stuff like that. Is there anything you think that the original game did better in terms of visuals compared to the remake, or is the remake just completely superior in your guys' opinion in that regard?
Yeah, honestly, I can't think of anything that original did better on.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've already kind of covered that. Like, if we're referring to just the visual elements, I do think the remake or the original game, obviously, I think most of the characters looked better. But in terms of just graphical fidelity, of course, the remake's going to win in that regard. The creature designs are creature designs. I think maybe it's hard to say. Like, I mean, the remake did stick pretty close to the original designs for most of the creatures, I think.
Made it more
So
disgusting.
yeah, I mean, I guess you could maybe say they're maybe better in the remake just because of the enhanced visual fidelity, obviously, that, there's more detail. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think visually, yeah, for the most part, the remake is superior aside from just the, um, some of the missteps
Design.
with the way the characters look. Yeah. Um, yeah, other than that, yeah, I think it's mostly just better.
Yeah, because I'm only asking because like some of the lighting and stuff has been like just redone from the ground up. And I don't know like how
Yeah.
familiar some of you guys are with like Frostbite engine and just how that engine works, right? But like something that kind of sticks out to me at least is that introduction scene when you're first getting into the Ishimura, right? And you see all the like the stars and stuff.
I mean, like when you're staring into the sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, that was in the original too, I'm pretty sure. Like it kind of happens the same way.
yeah. Because I actually think the remake does that pretty well because of the fact that it's on Frostbite engine. Frostbite engine, the one thing that I fucking cannot stand about it, at least in the case of Battlefield, because they make sure that sun brightness is like cranked up to like 20 and right in your face, right? But in
Solar flare.
yeah, but in Dead Space remake, right? I think that at least in context to where you're at that point in the game, right, which is like literally the beginning, I think it works really well, solely because of the fact that you're literally looking at a sun in a distant, galaxy, right? So I think it works pretty well, but I think like some of the lighting tricks and stuff like that in the original are they're not necessarily bad or anything. I think they did very well for the time. I think the original did make use of less smoke though by comparison. because I think the remake increased the amount of like smoke in certain areas, and like
The fog and all that shit. Which
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
kind of makes sense considering you're an industrial ass ship.
yeah. But all in all, I think the remake does a pretty good job with like recreating a lot of those areas and doing it pretty faithfully. Yeah, I think the only one that maybe you could make an argument for, but like I don't know who would, is where you're sitting down in the turret to do the meteor self ADS mini game. If you wanted to talk about like, oh, like this place looks different, right? It's like the lighting and everything's all fucked up. Like it's like, yeah, but you're not even in the same like location anymore technically, right? Because they got rid of that whole mini game for you. So
At that point, you just punch in the air, trying to find something to pick on.
yeah, exactly. But somebody out there will argue for it. I'm sure of it. But yeah, no.
You know, nobody's gonna argue for
What's that?
them fixing the way the gravity stuff worked. How you used to have to jump everywhere instead of fly.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
probably
that
the
is-
biggest turn off for
The jetpack.
the original.
Yeah, the jet booster thing is so much better. Like, it's not even a contest. I don't think anybody's gonna miss getting disoriented, jumping into the ceiling, and being like, "Where the hell am I?"
Yeah, that was annoying.
That
in
was
the
very
original.
disorienting.
Yeah, that was
It
another
made
thing
those,
they took from Dead Space 2, actually, though. The
It made those little like those tentacle baby necromorphs or whatever you call them, like really annoying to deal with, like the ones that shoot you with like missiles. Like, I fucking hated those things.
Now I can abort them with authority.
Actually,
Yeah.
this is one thing I'm not sure if they had in the original. The dark necromorphs, the ones that have like completely like black skin, and they're like blood red eyes,
Yeah, the advanced variants. I'm pretty sure that's only in the remake, but I don't remember something.
Yeah, because those were new and those looked really interesting as well. Because like I think they're basically the same as the standard necromorphs. They just have that additional detail where their eyes glow a little bit brighter red.
So are they trying to do sort of like the Crimson Head approach with like just more like stronger necromorphs?
I wouldn't say Crimson Head in a sense because you still find the same type of enemy. It's just they're stronger variants of them.
Stronger and more aggressive.
I think it's worse than the ones that warp around. My
Oh.
least favorite
Oh
Pokemon.
yeah. Those are in the original game as well.
Crack over
But,
there.
yeah, fuck those things.
Locked up on drugs, bro. I'm like, nah,
Oh.
these guys are too much. They can actually jump you.
Actually, I want to go back on the suit design as well. There's one thing that I wanted to talk about. In this game, he at least in the remake, right? He takes off the helmet a couple of times, whereas in the original, he just has it on the whole time. He never takes it off up until the very end of the game, right? And actually, I don't even remember if he took it off in the original game, but
You might not have, because I don't really remember him doing that.
What,
I know
helmet?
that's definitely something that they probably changed in the remake of him just taking off the helmet more.
Yeah, he
I
took the
think
helmet
actually,
off and,
if you're talking about like I think the opening scene, he might have I think he might have seen the back of his head in the original. But yeah, so aside from that, I don't know if he did.
Yeah,
And I
in the
think
original, he did take his helmet off twice, but in the
Oh.
remake, he takes off more when you're having conversations.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if the reason for that is just because just due to the fact that he was maybe designed to be more just a silent protagonist in the original, and they just didn't really want you to see his face that often, if at all.
Which makes
But-
sense, right? Why would you show your face if you're not talking, right? So like,
Yeah.
that would make sense.
Yeah, but of course in the remake, they took more. I guess they were assuming he would just be more, just more of a character, more like how he was in 2.
yeah. Well, the only reason why I'm bringing that up is because I thought this was kind of interesting. You think some of the things that they had taken from Dead Space 2, this would be the one thing that might have also applied, is the way that he takes off the helmet. Because in one, it's just a straight up helmet. He just puts it on, and then it has like a vacuum seal that connects to the body of the suit, right? But in 2 and 3, it's a physical thing that like comes from the suit and attaches to his head, right? Do you think they should have like integrated that idea from Dead Space 2 and 3 into this remake, or do you think it's fine as is with?
I don't care. I think it's fine as is because it is an engineering helmet, right? Not the standard suits you get from 2 and 3. Those aren't engineer suits.
Yeah, maybe that was the idea. Is that it's not exactly the same kind of suit.
So, I thought it was just kind of an interesting little detail. For all the things that they did take from Dead Space 2 and implemented them into the remake, that was like one of the things that they chose not to do. Trying to think what else we could talk about regarding Dead Space. How do you guys think about what do you guys think about the soundtrack? Because I think it's pretty much identical in both games in this regard. Yay, nay, could have been better.
I mean, when it comes to the soundtrack, though, I don't go to Dead Space for that, admittedly. So I don't listen to a theme of a character. I listen to the core sound design. If we go by pure sound design, as usual, Dead Space is top notch, especially for the remake.
Yeah, honestly, like I don't really remember too much about the soundtrack. It's like
Dead
Brandon
Space has
said,
music.
It's more atmospheric. It's more just focused. I mean, I'd remember more just about the general sound design, the enemies, the way the enemies sounded, the sounds, the environmental sounds, stuff like that. Which I think both games. It's hard to say. I mean, I would say they both did a pretty equal. I mean, for the most part, I don't know if I'd say like either one did it better than the other. I'm not too sure. I think they left in that like I think there was like it might have been for I'm not sure if it was one of the advertisements for the game they did like I think it was Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep, that was the thing.
Advertisement.
Yeah.
It was also in one of the movies.
Yeah. But yeah, aside from that, like I just don't really remember too much about the soundtrack in particular.
That's fair. Yeah, well, yeah, it's like you guys said, Dead Space isn't really known for its soundtrack, right? But for the few tracks that are there, I don't think they remixed the tracks, to be quite honest. If they did, like, it's news to me. As far as I know, they sound pretty identical. I think they might have made them a little more dynamic, but I think that was always pretty good, even in the originals. So, like, even then, it's... Yeah, I don't know. It's there, right?
Yeah, like Dead Space was more so about just sort of trying to kind of keep you on your toes. Like, I mean, because there'll be a lot of moments where a xenomorph will just pop out of nowhere. Like, they'll just be like mostly either silence or just the sounds of the environment. Oh yeah, sorry.
Wrong franchise.
Yeah, right. So a necromorph would just like pop out, and it'd just be more about like kind of in some ways, in some parts of the game, just kind of setting up that like a scare, like a jump scare.
They just give you stingers.
Yeah, and then that's when there'll be like some kind of like a soundtrack will pop in and just have some dramatic music or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think for doing for that, I think that it was pretty effective. I guess that's about the extent I could really comment on the I guess whatever soundtrack is there.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of what else we could talk about regarding both Dead Space here. I think, like, actually, there is a thing I could bring up that I don't think the original had the foresight for, but I'm not sure if they make any references to with the remake. If it's there, it's probably, like, really obscure. There was the not side-scrolling, the first person like arcade shooter Dead Space spin-off.
Extraction.
Yeah, Extraction. Like Dead Space original obviously did not have the foresight to include any of the lore surrounding that game, of course. Um, the remake, as far as I know, it doesn't as well, but if it's there, it's probably like super obscure. Do you think that they should have maybe like implemented some more like Easter eggs and nods to that game as well, considering that it is part of the overall Dead Space lore?
If it doesn't, if it had nothing to do with Dead Space 1, then no, there's no point in doing it. Because
I
if
actually never played Extraction.
I don't remember the exact story for that game in particular, but if it does connect to Dead Space 1 in particular, like what happened on the planet when they discovered the marker initially before they put it on Ishimura, then sure they could have add a little wink nudges to it. But if not, then it's fine as is.
It
Like, it
is
doesn't need to, like,
it is the prequel to Dead Space 1.
prequel.
Yeah, and it's supposed to.
Okay.
It starts actually in at Aegis 7, and you're basically going you're
Yeah, okay, that's
working
what
your
it
way
was.
up. So yeah, so it's backwards, and then the character.
Okay,
I think.
with that and
Oh, go on.
I said with that and there's a good chance that references or not nods or like notes whatever to that game. But if you're looking for something like like I don't know a character or some shit though, I don't
No,
think they
no,
would
no,
have
no.
done it.
Just like just small little nods, like oh, like hey, like this character was here, or like, just a little like item or whatever that it's not interactable or anything, but just like you could see like oh hey, like I recognize that if I played that game, that sort of thing. Nothing like super major that like breaks the story or anything, because obviously I'm obviously I think that would be a little bit too much work, and that would also have to require like the foresight of like okay, so how do you also implement stuff like that into other games, right, to make sure that it doesn't bastardize the overall lore that's established, right? Because that, I mean, that's kind of like a fine line that we're crossing even with that alternate ending, right? Is like that ending kind of conflict, not that it conflicts with the lore, but it feels very out of place when you take into consideration how the next game is supposed to follow up, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I think they were probably more focused on, I guess, hyping the player up for a potential Dead Space 2 remake with that, as opposed to just anything else, which is unfortunately probably not going to happen, or at least not the way we would hope at this point.
Okay, so I think the last thing we can talk about is actually favorite boss fights in Dead Space, just generally speaking. Do you have one, and which would it be?
favorite boss fights in Dead Space in general.
Yeah, just Dead Space one, or
Yeah, the
or
first game.
yeah.
Uh, Honestly, not really. The boss fights aren't necessarily the strong point, but I guess the closest one would be like the steroid as fuck necromorph that you counter in was it chapter 6? No, the one that's unkillable technically.
The Hunter.
That probably be the that probably be the closest one, I guess. But yeah, not really.
He feels more like a set piece boss since you just blow his legs off and run away.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, I would agree. Yeah, the bosses of Dead Space really aren't the best part about the game, but they're not really. I wouldn't say they're like terrible either. Uh, I think the only one that was kind of maybe I guess memorable, maybe not like I don't know in a particularly good way, but maybe the final boss. I think it was I
The
think
Hive Mind.
Grave Mind or something. Hive Mind, yeah. Uh, just because of how easy it was for a final boss. Like I just remember it being pretty easy. Uh, I don't know if they really addressed that in the remake. I don't know. I don't think I really
Not
struggled with
really.
them in the yeah. Uh, and then the only other one, like yeah, you already mentioned the one that shows up that is technically unkillable, and then the one in that you fight in 0G that you just have to throw stuff at when it's vulnerable. But yeah, I don't really remember too much else. I feel like Dead Space 2 would be more notable with in terms of boss fights. One, yeah, there's not really a lot there.
Be honest though, Dead Space and bosses aren't necessarily the strongest concept. I'll be honest though, cause the interaction of Dead Space is more fun when you find the sandbox of enemies, not the super boss. Unfortunately, Dead Space kind of suffer from lack of a interesting boss due to how the enemies are, right? This ain't like Resident Evil where you have a nemesis or you have a Wesker or some shit, right? You don't have that kind of stuff.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I think I like the Hunter the most, probably. Just because of the fact that it reminds me a lot of the Regenerator, because it's basically the same concept, and also because it's the one that makes me practically freak out whenever it's in close proximity to me. So, because I'm always expecting to just get fucked up whenever it's 2 feet in front of me. So I think that's the one that I enjoy just because of how much tension I get from going up against that particular boss at any point in the game.
Yeah,
because you go up.
And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think up until that point, I don't know if you've really encountered any enemies that you can't really be killed.
Yeah.
So I guess it was. Yeah, I guess it's also kind of notable just because, yeah, you fight it and you're like, oh shit, I can't actually kill this thing.
Yeah. So I think that's the one that kind of stands out the most for me. What about you, James? You got any differing opinions here? Want to be a contrarian at all? And he's dead.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh.
There you go, man. Cook.
He's dead. So, okay. So actually, there's one other thing we could talk about really quick before we wrap up is, so we know okay, they're looking at not doing any more Dead Space remakes and potentially looking at just getting rid of the IP entirely from EA. If you could. Yeah, assuming that rumor is true, right? If there is some validity to it, or if there's not validity, but maybe there is some truth behind them potentially wanting to. Well, there is no truth to this because there's no rumor on this. But if they wanted to do another remake, right? Would you want to see it? And if they did end up selling it off, who do you think would be the best publisher and developer to take a stab at Dead Space?
Well,
I think there's. I mean, I know some people might have, mixed opinions on me saying this, but I think it's kind of funny that this happened because, it's I guess if someone were to do a remake, the best possible option would be the creator, the original creator, Schofield, if he actually somehow acquired the IP again and did it with his own studio, that would be pretty funny, just if he actually got it back and did the remake himself. I guess that would be the best scenario, because otherwise I'm not really sure what other dev I could think of. I could think of different developers that are good with doing, remakes and remasters. I mean, Night Dive is a notable example, but this just isn't a game I can see them really doing.
No, it's not their game.
Yeah, it's not really their wheelhouse. So it's kind of hard to say. I really don't know. I mean, I think the best option, like I said, would actually be Schofield. Opinions aside about his work on Callisto and all that. But,
hey, he's not even at striking distance anymore. He left soon after.
That's true too. Yeah.
So
and which
I don't know.
A
Yeah.
good thing, considering what came out about that company, especially now, involving Subnautica, I truly believe that the company screwed him over more so than anything else.
Yeah, I personally
I guess maybe
believe
if
that
Schofield were to actually do something, or yeah, I don't know, maybe do another studio or something. I don't know, but I guess yeah, in some way, if he could just get it back and you maybe get a team or something to do it, like that would be the best. Like I said, best case scenario.
That's
But
the dream
honestly, though,
scenario, I think.
Yeah.
there's two companies that can actually do it though. I'm gonna say Capcom for obvious reasons. And really enough though, Sony with Bluepoint or other studios can actually get Dead Space done. Question is though, are they willing to do it?
What was the first one you cut out on my end?
Capcom.
Capcom. I've heard that one actually just the other day, and I was just talking about this with James, and I was saying like I don't think Capcom would be a good idea to have Dead Space.
Why is that?
The reason why I personally think Capcom would not be a good fit is because Dead Space is like inherently a Western horror like franchise, right? And I know you could argue, well, like Resident Evil's pretty damn Western, all things considered, right? But like, I just feel like it's one of those things where like you would have to have like a Western dev team make it because of it inherently being a Western IP, right? It's kind of like how you can't just have a Western studio making Silent Hills so well. I mean, look at how long it took to get a decent enough Silent Hill game done by a Western studio, and even then, that's pretty debated, you know.
I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be real. That is kind of cap considering the amount of Western developers that worked on Japanese IPs, and in a lot of cases where they actually worked on them that are better.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily the issue. I do believe that there are plenty of Japanese devs that could, easily do a game like Dead Space. I mean, I don't know. I guess Capcom would be an interesting choice, but I just honestly I can't see it happening. I don't see how that would really happen. I mean, it'd be kind of crazy if it did.
Yeah, because
But
I want to add
but
to,
yeah,
like,
no,
a
I
formula
think
of-
like there are plenty. Like I said, I think there's plenty of examples you could point to of like Japanese devs doing like a game that you would think would be done, but more suited, I guess, to a Western dev team, but a Japanese dev team could handle it just as well. Um, but I just think with Silent Hill, it's more an issue of general just mismanagement by Konami, more so than anything. It's not. I don't even know if it's really the issue is that it's done by like a Western dev. I think it's more so it's just being done by inexperienced devs that either don't care or don't actually like know what they're doing. As we saw with like
or at
a lot
worst,
of the stuff.
Konami themselves.
Yeah, like a lot of stuff that happened post Team Silent. They just kind of it just seemed like they threw the IP around to anybody. That's I think more so the issue.
I guess that's a fair point. I just like that's just the way that I'm kind of seeing it is like because of how because of how Dead Space is. I mean, considering the fact that I don't think there's ever been a Dead Space game, even the remake, that has ever released in Japan. They like people would have to import.
Well, I guess that would be the other thing to consider. Like, it probably wouldn't. I can't see it doing well in Japan. I mean, if you're talking about like in terms of the audience, or like I could see that. Like,
well,
yeah, it's definitely more.
I'm thinking more of the content in general, right? Because like, okay, like Dead Space is known for its like visceral and gory nature, right? And that's like the one thing that like if you got that from Capcom, right? It would be tame by comparison to what Glenn Schofield and the rest of the developers that have worked on this franchise over the years have done with it, right?
You think they would just tone down the violence?
Exactly, yeah, and that's why I would say that. I'm not saying that it like.
Okay, but I gotta ask an important question here though. What is more important though, the content of the game, or a few more gory bits being shown?
Ooh, okay, yeah, that's actually a really good question.
I think you also I think you also have to consider that Dead Space. I mean, yeah, there's more to it than just the gore, but it is a franchise that is known for just having like really, graphic scenes. If you remember too, the advertising campaign for like Dead Space 2, it was sold on just, your mother would hate this game or whatever, and then they show all the death scenes of Isaac,
Oh,
the brutal ways
don't
Isaac
get me
was
wrong. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be violent though, but what I'm saying is that at the core though, would you rather sacrifice them having a slightly toned down version of the game? Because Capcom can't make a violent game if they wanted to though. We're just in a strange in between with Capcom. Either have that or no game at all.
It really depends. Like if they can do well in other areas, like I don't really necessarily mind having toned down gore and violence. But yeah, I mean, it really just depends. Like, Dead Space it is also, we have to remember, known for its like decapitation mechanic. Just and severing of limbs, using them as weapons, stuff like that. I would still hope that stuff like that would be retained. That we're not going to get rid of stuff like that, because that's another notable thing about the franchise.
Yeah, that's core gameplay mechanic. They cannot get rid of that. And that's fine and all, but I'm saying, like, no, just if we can sacrifice some gore, I can take a solid game with little gore versus no, not getting it at all. That's basically what I'm trying to get at here. But another thing I want to add to that.
I was just gonna say really quick, like I appreciate the pushback, because it's like, you bring up a really good point. Like, would I rather sacrifice that gore in favor of just being able to get Dead Space that's still a fun game to play, right? Which is a good question. I've never actually contemplated that possibility, and I guess my answer would be it depends on how it's done, right? If it's still faithful in terms of the what we're so familiar with Dead Space in terms of how it plays mechanically, right? And just what the story is about and stuff like that, then maybe I'd be up for it. It just depends. So
I wanted to add to that. Just remember too that Dead Space at its core too is basically a Resident Evil clone, modern Resident Evil clone, right? So, and remember, Capcom has to censor Resident Evil in Japan still. So, they still can make the most gory ass fuck game, but tone it down for the Japanese audience if they're going to release it in Japan. So, two things still could happen.
Not
all doom and gloom.
Yeah, I guess that's, completely fair points to bring up, because I get, like I said, my sort of perspective would be, I don't think that they would be the best pick, but totally understand, and I think that those are very fair and valid points to bring up, in counter to my perspective on that. I feel like this one's gonna be a tough one if I had to pick. Dream scenario would be, Glenn Schofield starts a new studio, right? And and he somehow acquires the rights. I don't think that'll ever happen. But if I had to pick a Western publisher to maybe get the rights to do another Dead Space, maybe THQ Nordic. But if not THQ Nordic, Atari might be a good possibility, just because they recently acquired Cold Fear, and they're looking at doing a remake for Cold Fear, possibly, or a remaster.
I gotta ask, do they have a background or a portfolio to justify that idea?
That I don't know. That's the only thing.
Atari.
That's why I said big maybe on that one, but that one's a big maybe. I think that, like I said, THQ Nordic would make a little more sense of my choices.
The other one, the other ones maybe I could throw out there, the guys that did maybe Alien Isolation, what was it, Creative Assembly, I think that was their name, and then possibly I guess in terms of publisher, Sega maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. I'm not too sure.
Well, Sega doesn't do that stuff anymore. They stick to in-house, so I highly doubt they will do anything like that again.
It's kind of hard to say. Other than that, maybe just some really small no-name people come along and do it. But yeah, other than that, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, that's why I think this is kind of a weird situation, right? Because like, let's assume that it does happen, right? That they do sell off the IP, and then whoever gets the rights to it, they want to do like either just straight ports of 2 and 3 and some of the other games, right? Or they do full on remakes specifically for 2 and 3, right? It's like, who would be the right fit for that in like the most realistic situation, right? Because it's like, you like, yeah, we could spitball ideas, right? But like at the end of the day, right, it's like whoever ends up getting the IP, they might be the best choice, or they might be the worst choice, or maybe just the choice that nobody expected, right? Like it's really up in the air with that one. It's like I don't know. Well, James hasn't thrown his 2 cents in here. You want to give your take on who you think should get the rights to Dead Space if that should happen?
Well, as you and I discussed previously, not Capcom. I feel like I wouldn't see that game until, 8 years from now. No offense to them, but they're kind of becoming like Square Enix to me. If it's not Resident Evil
In what
or Monster
regard?
Hunter, you will see it. You will see it in your next lifetime.
In fairness, though, how's that any different now than what we got with Dead Space?
Yeah, I mean, Dead
I
Space
don't
for the
know.
moment
What
is
was
at least
the?
pretty dormant. So, I mean, I guess it wouldn't
It's
really be any
dormant, but
different.
when it was coming out,
And
it didn't take that long.
going
Like back when
from
it
3
started.
to now, that's a pretty big weight gap. I'm just saying. And not to mention, though, at least say what you will about Capcom in terms of waiting for a game right. You are getting a quality game. I just put that out there. Getting a quality game. Even the Capcom's worst game that came out in the last 5 years is still the best game in the market.
I could see the argument for that, I guess. But I would say just give it to Glenn. Just give it back to the creator. I kind of have to sit in that same fence. Like, yeah, Callisto just sucked, but like, okay. They did good with their own IP back then, so like, just hand it back
But
over, I'd say.
yeah, Callisto had other problems inside of the game itself. Like even if the game didn't have like other issues, I don't think it would still have been that great. All to consider, because it is still made by that team, right? But
Yeah.
with the right team or the right people, I think they can recreate that magical. But I got asked though, like in this regard, why in particular when the series itself has gotten bigger without him and his input?
You're asking why?
Yeah, yeah. Why Glenn Schofield in particular? Why you guys want him to get it back? They're just like
Mm.
Well,
justify
he is the
the play.
guy. I mean, regardless of how you feel about him, like he is the guy that made, created the game. That is his
Yeah, he
game
created the
technically.
first one. The last two, the IP itself is bigger without his input after the first game. So once he get the IP back, doesn't mean he will follow through with the current standards of Dead Space. So
I guess
like,
maybe
I just want you to
we should more so
elaborate on
specify
it.
like it. So yeah, I mean, I guess either him or you somehow reassemble the team that did at least, the other two games, because I mean, Dead Space 3 was more that was a game that was kind of just messed with by EA for the most part. That's why it didn't really turn out the way, as good as it could have been. So yeah, I mean, I guess the other best case scenario would either be like either one, Glenn gets it back, or two, we somehow reassemble like the people who are also had a big hand in making the other two games, and have them, just somehow, make a remake for two. Uh, it just, that's the only other thing I guess I would specify in that regard. I mean, um, yeah. So I mean, but yeah, either scenario would be like, the best case scenario. And also not being made on UE5, like UE5, unless you get people that know what they're doing, to work on it, work on the engine, UE5, because most of the time, it's just done because like I mentioned, it's easier to develop games for that, um, but it also, as a result, it has a lot of problems. So I mean, realistically, like it would just be better to for them to do like another, in-house engine or something. But um, I unfortunately I think it's more likely, even if we did have the best case scenario where Schofield gets back, or we have the original team come back. Um, I feel like more likely it would be developed on UE5 because they in that scenario too they wouldn't have access to Frostbite, and that being the case, like the thing I think is most likely is they would probably have to use UE5, um, unless they had access to some other engine or something. But yeah,
I have I guess a sort of like a add on to that question that Brandon had, because even though I was asking for Glenn as well, like, uh, what if in like a weird scenario, Motive decides to kind of break away from EA somehow, or if they can, right? I know this is like not going to be possible realistically, right? But if you could have, or even just having just one of the developers that worked on the remake, right? If they just left Motive, start like, and to go to another company or start up their own company and somehow acquire the rights to Dead Space, uh, would you want a situation like that? Considering how well done,
yeah. I guess
the
if there
remake
was some
was.
way that Motive could come back and do it, then yeah, that would be another, that would be great. But like you said, I think that's like a highly unlikely scenario. I guess that Glenn Schofield acquiring the rights would also be a highly unlikely scenario too. Um, but yeah, I guess that would be like maybe the third option. Um, Other than that, like it's pretty up in the air.
Okay, so I think we've covered just about everything we could. In the future, we're gonna have to talk about the Dead Space 2 and 3. I'm gonna have to replay Dead Space 2 though. It's been a couple of years since I've touched that game. And Dead Space 3, of
Same.
course, me and James have to go out of our way to finish it. But in the meantime, are there any final thoughts regarding Dead Space? Anything you want to share before we sign off here?
Yes.
Can we at
Make
least
Dead Space
remake
great
two?
again.
Whoa, two people at once. Brandon, what were you saying?
Hey, you heard him, James. Two people at once. Let's go at the same time. Okay. Make Dead Space great again. Let's go.
James?
Actually, real quick though, this one thing I actually would like to see, and this would most likely never happen. I would like to see an actual remake of the mobile game, cause that game actually is pretty cool, and the protagonist is
Ooh.
caught me by surprise on who it was.
Is it not Isaac?
No, it's not actually.
Who is it?
It's a woman actually. In fact, they use the same template as Dead Space 1, where the character is silent, but at the end of the game, when you defeat the final boss, she gets unmasked and trying to call for backup. And I believe that is one of the characters that was referenced in Dead Space 2 or the other game with the puzzle shit.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
so that's another
Ignition.
lead up character. Yes, that one. I would like to see that game get fully fleshed out because I thought it was pretty cool. At least story wise, it was really neat, and it deserves a second chance, especially that character in particular. I'm like, you guys literally just did a bait and switch unmasked character, and you do nothing with her afterwards. She just disappears. We don't know if she's dead or alive yet, you know. So I'd like to see that character get more recognition.
Gotcha. And James, you were gonna say something too?
I just want two to get redone since it's my favorite.
Yeah, I think
That's
actually,
pretty much it.
there is one thing that I want to bring up regarding that. If they do a remake
Mhm.
for 2, I do hope that they also address the DLC content. There was that DLC chapter specifically. I would like to be able to play that because that was console exclusive as well, unfortunately. So if they were to ever remake Dead Space 2, I would like the complete package.
Yeah, I actually don't remember that.
Yeah, ironically enough, that DLC is a continuation of the characters from Extraction. So specifically the male character that you play as in Extraction. So it continues on from their perspective. So it's unfortunate that that was locked to consoles, because I never got to play it because I played Dead Space 2 through PC. But yeah, that would be my hope, as well as that they remake Dead Space 2. And I hope these rumors are just false, and people are just getting incorrect information regarding that. Hopefully that's going to be the case, but time will tell, right? Chaos, did you have any other final thoughts, or?
Not really. I mean, yeah, the first game is pretty much a classic, and the remake did a fairly decent job at recreating most of it. It's just a shame that I guess we might not see the other two games be remade. And if they are remade, it might be by somebody else. But like you mentioned, it would be good to see like 2 and particularly even 3 be remade, just so that they could maybe address some of the issues that were present in the original game. Like you mentioned, like the console exclusive chapter. It would be cool if they like implemented that somehow. And with 3, honestly, like I would like to see a lot of the ideas that did not make it into 3 actually, like, somehow be implemented in the remake. It would be cool if they brought Schofield on to help out with the remake of maybe 3, just to expand on some of the ideas he had. He wasn't able to actually like properly flesh out in the original version.
He didn't work on
But oh, really? So I know there
Yeah,
was
that's
like a
why.
lot of ideas or concepts that they had for 3 that didn't make it
Yeah,
into
that
the
was for
final game.
Volition. Yeah, Volition
Okay.
couldn't get all their stuff working
Yeah,
on. But
well,
yeah,
in
like I
that
said
case, like,
before,
yeah, I mean,
he didn't work on
either
there.
way, I mean, it would be cool to just at least bring the guys that wanted to do that, in somehow, and have them actually like, somehow like bring that in. Uh, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of a pipe dream, I guess, because I mean, I can't really see that happening. But yeah, that would be like the best thing if they could do that. Um, but yeah, hopefully, like Motive does, stay on to do like the other remakes in some way. But
If
I
if
mean, I
not
guess
that,
it's
a Dead Space 4, because we left off on a
yeah, Dead Space
cliffhanger.
4 too. Yeah, that would be great. Um, yeah, I mean, aside from just remaking the other 2 games.
Yeah, so, well, in any case, it's been fun talking about Dead Space. Hopefully we can come back to talk about the other games in the future. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and do some outros. So, Chaos, where can we find you, good sir?
You can find me on YouTube at KaptainKaos, YouTube and Twitter at KaptainKaos, and you can also find me on Instagram at Enigmatic Arts, where I post my art stuff.
Jameson, where can we find you, good sir?
On Twitter at DevilHunterJames.
And Brandel, last but not least, where can we find you, good sir?
None of you goddamn business. You can find me on X and Blue Sky at ImmortalBrandel. I'm mostly on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. But aside from that, I don't use social media that much, so there's only places you can catch me do stuff. If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. Well, anyway, you all know me as BioDevil_Dom. If you're not watching this on my YouTube, you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, and everything else that I might be on. There should be a link tree somewhere. You'll find me, I think. But until then, we hope you all enjoyed. Hope to see you all in the next one. And yeah, take care and have a good time. Bye.